The Politics program is brought to you, as always, by your good friends at The Contender. The game of presidential debate. Folks, we are putting in our order for the 2016 expansion on Monday. That means we are only weeks away from you having it in your hands. You want it? You need it? Head on over to thecontender.us right now. You're going to click on that expansion, and it says unavailable. But, yeah, that's for right now. If you're smart, you look right under the unavailable tab, and you say pre-order the 2016 expansion pack now. Holy smokes, this is real. I'm very, very proud of this one. 100 cards. Quotes from Bernie Sanders, Marco Rubio, Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, Martin O'Malley, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, and so much Donald Trump, you'll find yourself dizzy. TheContender.us is where you need to go to pre-order that. The only place you can do it, TheContender.us. And by our Patreon, patreon.com/JURY, which is where we are. And this is after the great migration after the first of the month. We are again only 3 patrons away. Only 3 patrons away from the monumental 420 range. Also, we are only $2 away from $600. Again, at $700, we do a big fat call-in show for everybody who is a fan of either this program or the jury program, because you don't just get one podcast for your Patreon dollar, you get 2. It's the best bargain on the internet. Come on over, patreon.com/JURY. But enough of this nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a big week in politics. Let's go ahead and start this here politics program. Politics. Politics. Oh, my good God. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, allow me to welcome you to this, the only politics program on the internet that gives you the straight dope, the real uncut. This is where the big BSers play. The Politics program. My name, your humble host, your humbrel host as well, which I'm sure is a word in Hungarian, is Justin Robert Young. And man, we got a real show. We're gonna talk a lot about the media. We're gonna talk a lot about Bill Clinton, and we're gonna talk a lot about what is the tap out point on this primary season, because overall, I think we can all agree that we are at the point where things have kind of stopped being cute. Now, they're still interesting. Of course, they're still important. But they've kind of stopped being novel, which is to say that barring for a massive situation that completely reshuffles the deck and makes things a totally different ball game, for which I would limit to Hillary being indicted by the FBI, Godzilla attacking New York during the primary, and somebody ramming through the Senate a purge initiative. We really don't have much difference, because even a gigantic global event like a terrorist attack or an economic collapse, I really don't know how that would affect the primary. Now, we have a very interesting general coming up, and the end of the Republican primary is right now promising to be amazing, but we got a long way between here and then. And I know that because, and I will announce here for the first time, if you are in the Cleveland area, then a live Politics will be taking place in Cleveland at the site of the GOP convention. I have no idea where we're going to do it. I know that I am going to be there, and even if we're just all in the back of a bar, we will be having a very, very, very good time. So if you're in central or northern Ohio, ladies and gentlemen, get your stuff together. We're going to be there, and by we, I mean me, maybe John. Who knows? Let's so I'm planning to go to the GOP convention. I realized, man, we got a long while. We got until late or mid-July. It's early April. So we got pretty much all of April, May, June, and half of July, and it's 3.5 months. I mean, that is cuckoo bananas. And right now, we have a bit of a stale, what they call in the game of Hearthstone, a stale meta. Meaning, we know that Donald Trump, and what Wisconsin proved to us, Ted Cruz wins by 13 points in Wisconsin. That has proven to us is what many had always thought about Donald Trump, which is a refreshing thing to say, because normally when you talk about the pundits' expectation of Donald Trump, it was usually followed by the qualifier, and that turned out to be totally wrong. But many of the pundits had speculated that Donald Trump has what is known as a high floor, but a low ceiling. He is effectively the crawl space of candidates. He will have devout support that within the Republican Party usually translates to around 30% of the electorate. But he can't seem to get above 40% state by state. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz has run a very, very good campaign. Probably him and Bernie Sanders have been the standout campaigns. And he will beat Donald here and again, but he's not going to totally turn the tide and lock it in. And either seem particularly adept at adjusting their strategies. Ted Cruz, for his own benefit, because his strategy has worked out really, really well. Again, a candidate that has his beliefs and is as far right as he is, very rarely makes it this far. Very rarely is competitive, and almost more importantly, almost never locks up the fairly unconditional support of the party elders and establishment. And as we have discussed ad nauseum, I mean, how many more times can we say this about Donald Trump? How many times? Like, just act like... I'm going to say this, and this might be controversial, all right? But I've been thinking a lot about it. The line between Donald Trump and somebody that would be portrayed as a transcendent, once-in-a-generation conservative leader is like 2 weeks of charm school. Like, it is frightening, because I believe that somebody who is currently, and this is probably a far more interesting scenario like when he wins Florida than it is now, when he's kind of been dinged up a little bit, and he's certainly done a lot to get in his own way. Also, a lot of his own failings have been revealed within his organization. But the conservative electorate has been begging to give him a fresh look. They have been begging to say, just show me you can be a guy and not a crazy, weird, lumpy avatar of anger. And this is another thing he's doing. Let me see if I can bring this up. Donald, the real, what is it? Donald Trump. There we go. Real Donald Trump. He might be the first ever, I believe I had that candidate. Bringing up his Twitter here now. Nobody beats me on national security. Looks like I was right about NATO. I had no doubt. Like, I understand that you need to prove your credentials when you are an outsider that has never held office. I get that. I understand it. But at this point, he's in. He's in. Like, he is getting enough of a resounding amount of support from the electorate that he can just say, I agree with this. I'm glad that there are more people joining this movement. That's how classy people say a-hole things, right? Like there's a lot, I think we need to take a re-examination of the problems that we have with quote-unquote political speech. Because I think we very often, in this election specifically, have gotten it mixed up with politically correct speech, which is in and of itself a weird concept, but we can get into that later. But political speech is basically just if you walk into a room with 3 people you know, 1 person you've never met, and 2 people that you only know something about, both positive and negative, then you can say one sentence that hopefully pleases them all, but if not, pleases the people that you're going to please and doesn't offend the others. And I know we went through all this last week with the, are you so much of a loser that you can't realize that you've won? But like, now I'm almost, guys, I'm going to say this, and I don't know, it might be controversial. It might be something that I'm going to get letters about. It might be something that's going to break up friendships. But part of me's rooting for Donald Trump to get his head out of his ass. Not because I believe in him, not because I think he'd be a great president. In many cases, it's the exact opposite on both of those broader issues specifically. But I'm kind of interested to see if somebody, like, it's so rare that a legitimate shot at the White House could be squandered like this. Like, at this point, it's as if somebody I didn't like was eating, like, just a little bit of a steak that costs $7 million, right? And they're just, like, kind of, like, nibbling it, and they're like, I don't know. I don't think I like steak. I just don't think, I'm not a steak guy. I'm just not a steak guy. I'm sorry. And you just look at that steak and you're like, what? Like, this is such an amazing, like, I hope that you can develop a taste for it. I'm really hoping you can, because you don't know what you're missing. You don't know how rare this is. One of the stories that came out this week was that in Louisiana and in South Dakota and in a lot of these states that have already voted in caucuses and primaries, Ted Cruz is running laps around Donald Trump in doing the very boring, very time-consuming, very people-intensive job of corralling the people that will actually be delegates at the convention in Cleveland. They are actually going to be the people who pack their bags and head to Cleveland. Now, that means that if Donald Trump cannot get to 1237 delegates and then cannot make a deal with somebody, let's say John Kasich, to get past 1237, well, then they're going to take a vote, and that vote has already been done. We're already going to know the math on that. And then on the second ballot, the people that were delegates that were sent there to be bound to Donald Trump on the first ballot are all going to flip for Cruz. This is a revelation in that Donald Trump doesn't know what he is doing in terms of running a campaign. He's running a media-focused campaign. And unfortunately for him, again, it's just like I just kind of wonder what would have happened if Donald Trump were just a little bit smarter. Like, he's just not that smart of a guy, or he's not a tactician on the level that these other people are, that Ted Cruz is, that Hillary Clinton is, that Bernie Sanders is. You know, like, it's just a specialized skill. You know, I'll bet you that Donald Trump thinks that he could be a really good lawyer. I would actually, if I had a question to Donald Trump, I would ask him, you believe that you could be a really good president, right? Or you could bring something interesting to the Oval Office. What other jobs do you think that you could just walk in and do? Because I'll bet you lawyer's one of them. Like, and this is a great example. Like, I'll bet you he's one of those dudes that's like, hey, I can convince people. I convince people to do stuff all the time. I'm a deal maker, baby. I can just walk into a room, look somebody in the eye. I can explain the facts the way I want to see them explained. And then at the end of the day, they are going to be on my side. Get out of my dreams. Get into my car. But being a lawyer means knowing the ins and outs of law. It's not arguing, it's lawyering. It means that you can't do certain things, or else even if you do win, you will have it overturned on appeal. There's a lot of very boring, very nuanced ins and outs of that profession. And that's the case with running for president. You got to do a lot of really, really boring stuff. That's why you need a good team, and he doesn't seem to have it. Spent a lot of time on Donald Trump, and you know, it should come as no surprise. On the other side of the aisle, Bernie Sanders wins Wisconsin. And I want to bring up something that I saw a lot on Facebook the day after Bernie Sanders won. In fact, you want to know, we're going to dial it back a little bit. So I do the show last Friday, and then there was a really fun little afternoon for me right afterward. I wound up heading down to one of my favorite bars in Oakland, California. That is High Life. High Life Pizza. You roll in there. They got some pinball machines upstairs, and that's exactly what I did. I roll in, grabbed a beer, having a good time, living the dream. Then I walked on down to go wait in line at Hood Slam, my local independent wrestling outfit. Had a great time. Entertaining. The showcase of the immorals, the baby daddy of them all. I'm having a blast, man. Maybe overserved myself a little bit. That's how much of a blast that I was having. But between the haze of my excitement of going to play pinball and going to see some independent wrestling, I look at my phone and I see a tweet that I will paraphrase, multi-step tweet. And I assume the person who sent it to me is listening, because they obviously listened to the last one. That said, if you're for Hillary, just understand that she's not qualified, yada, 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 yada. But the basic undertone, the basic point was, I know that you're for Hillary, but I would like to explain to you some things. Which is odd. I always find a pointing out of bias very interesting. Number one, because I've not been, I don't really have a whole lot of guile of where my biases are. I think I've read on the internet my entire voting ballot for the last 3 elections, and I'll do the same this time. If you want to find it, go find it. If you don't have the time to go find it, then how much do you care? Otherwise, I'm very transparent about stuff, and I'm transparent about the idea that I don't really like Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is just not the person that I feel speaks to me. That's fine, right? I'm an American. I'm allowed to have that opinion. So it's odd that he would take the idea that I was a Hillary Clinton supporter, and it's also further strange considering the fact that the episode that I did last week compared her to a centuries-old vampire queen. The quote that I ascribed to Hillary Clinton was "Welcome to slavery," as what she should be saying to the rest of the Democratic Party. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea where within that you're like, well, obviously you think Hillary Clinton's the best woman for the job. Like, I don't get it. But I believe that this is the tip of a larger issue. Specifically, Bernie Sanders supporters believe that the media is against Bernie. The media is looking to bury their candidate. The media has chosen Hillary Clinton. On the Republican side, you get a lot of the same arguments. The media is helping Trump. Yes, Trump supporters, the media is unfair to Trump. Or whatever, not even Trump supporters. Look at Trump's Twitter. He'll let you know which of the shows are unfair to him. Is it for Cruz? Is it against Cruz because it doesn't show Cruz as much as Trump? Now, this is something that I've found very, very fascinating for a very, very, very long time, which is that most people don't know what the media is. Most people know what media outlets are. Most people don't know how media is created. And most people don't care to know. Because, in general, the media is not a tremendously consequential element of anybody's lives. People enjoy reading it. They enjoy getting their news from it. But they generally like to shoot the messenger. The messengers, meanwhile, the men and women who make up the media outlets around the country, up to and including independent, horse apples, non-contributing losers like me, are amazingly self-centered. Because there's nothing that the media loves to cover more about how people think about the media. Oh, the media loves it when people say the media is against them. Hence the fact that I'm doing this segment at all. And I started it with a personal anecdote. This is the micro, expand it to the macro. The media loves having people hate it. The media loves having people say that they hate the media like white people love to hear black comedians make jokes about white people. That's how much the media loves to hear it from the populace about how they're screwing things up. Why? Because it means the media gets to talk about its favorite subject. Not Hillary Clinton, not Donald Trump, but the media. This is all a long and roundabout way of saying that the idea of a media conspiracy is fairly ridiculous. Or at least an organized conspiracy, the likes of which is very often insinuated by people who are rooting for candidates that feel that they are against it. Now, certainly, news directors, specifically on television, where there is a far more finite resource, make decisions on who they're going to show, how long their packages are going to run, and where they're going to order them. This is a lot more pronounced than, let's say, what used to be newspaper layout, which, in general, you got the chance to thumb through and find the things that you like the best, as opposed to the very linear process of watching a television program or channel. So there are choices made. But the idea that, like, and I see this all the time, like, oh, MSNBC cuts off this person who's making a Bernie point. No doubt. Look at who gave Hillary Clinton money. Oh, look, the parent company of this thing. The idea that that would be able to trickle down to that level, right? That very minute, somebody has a finger on the button. Get him off. He's speaking truth to power. The idea that that's the case, I mean, I don't have evidence to say that it's wrong. I will say that it is inconsistent with almost every level of mass media that I have been involved with personally on any level. Like, these media conspiracies are never the friend of Occam's razor, right? Like, when somebody gets hustled off MSNBC, it's far more likely because they've got a hard out and a network commitment to advertising than it is that somebody was dropping truth bombs too fiery. So who's the media for? The media. Even when they're for other candidates. There is a very legitimate point to be made about how much airtime Donald Trump got throughout the summer. Donald Trump was portrayed, specifically then, as one of the biggest news stories of all time. Somebody that was a legitimate, of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Some random dude that is now all of a sudden become very, very popular. Kind of a sinister, weird Tim Burton version of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Although I'm sure that there's another S word with TH in it that many people would like to substitute for Smith. And because of that, you did not get the same kind of coverage that Jeb Bush would have gotten, that Marco Rubio would have gotten, that Ted Cruz would have gotten, that Rand Paul would have gotten, right? He threw a total monkey wrench not only into the electoral process, but also how things were covered. Mass media became a constant Trump cycle. But it's not because they love Donald Trump. It's not because that there is some big, gigantic will by the top down to make this man more powerful. It's because that's where the eyeballs were. Now, I was listening to, God bless him too, Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann was doing a podcast with Bill Simmons. Now, Keith Olbermann might be the first personality that I ever watched on television and said, I want to do that on SportsCenter. Now, I never really wanted to do sports per se, but he was obviously a very, very smart guy that cared about things. He, according to the book, Those Guys Have All the Fun, the ESPN retrospective, was one of the first people to care about, hey, how much is this company bringing in, ESPN, on SportsCenter? And then how should that be relative to what our salary demands are? And then he called around to other people that worked at various other cable networks and figured out what their ratio was of how much the show was bringing in advertising versus how much they were getting paid, realized that SportsCenter anchors were on the very, very low end of that scale, and brought all of his findings to ESPN and wound up getting a large raise. He is somebody that thinks long and hard about what his position is in terms of the value to the whole. So he made the point on the Bill Simmons podcast that part of the reason why Trump has done so well in terms of media coverage is twofold. Number one, he is ratings in an era where television, cable news ratings are not exactly soaring. And number two, because they are long swaths of time that a network doesn't have to pay an anchor. They don't have to pay a writing staff. They don't have to pay other people. They can literally just go ahead and put the camera on the Donald and he will ramble for an hour and you kill that hour of programming. And very often, this was in the primetime block. So what is the massive media conspiracy? Ratings, bottom line. That's it. It's not because Bernie Sanders is being railed against by the great corporate conglomerate. It's not because Ted Cruz is too Christian to be covered on a mainstream level. It's just the Occam's razor of it all. That some people are more newsworthy, some people aren't. And ultimately, if you find the answer to the question, what is the most selfish path for any news media outlet, including this one, it is very often the correct and true one if you look at the evidence. So like I said before, when are we going to get to a breaking point with this election? When do we finally get to the moment when it's irrefutable, when the chokehold is on and it's all over but the crying for anybody but these, the candidates that will make it to the general election? Let's start with the big stops that are upcoming for the GOP side. What we have coming up is New York and Pennsylvania. Donald Trump needs to win and probably should win both of those. Those are both proportional states. So the delegate split will be interesting. And as you've seen with what's happened in some of the primaries that have already come and gone, including, like I mentioned before, Louisiana, Colorado, South Dakota, Ted Cruz is very aggressive about cleaning up the delegates that he can possibly get and specifically girding himself for a multi-ballot convention. But really the moment that we'll know whether or not we are or are not going to a contested convention in Cleveland, Ohio, will be here in the sunny state of California. Yes, the California primary now ready to rumble. Now here we go. June 7th, 2016. And listen, this isn't in our poll dance this week. So let me just go ahead and read you this poll. Polls are just starting to gear up here in California on the Republican side. And, right now, LA Times has it as a Trump +1. Field has it as a Trump +7. Survey USA has it as a Trump +8. And those are far more realistic because they come from, a post-Rubio world. This is going to be interesting. This is going to be very, very, very interesting and exciting because if Cruz can win in California, then we have a real Pier 6 brawl in Cleveland. This is going to be crazy. I mean, at that point, Cruz has to start thinking about where is, what his vice president pick is going to be. Because then Cruz has more of a likely shot to cobble together some of the other candidates like Rubio, like Kasich. Kasich is going to be interesting. Kasich might be the vice presidential pick on either side, whether it's Cruz or Trump, because he's going to be sitting on a few delegates that could be the difference between securing the nomination or not. Very, 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 very interesting to see what happens in California. On the Democratic side, shrug emoji. Bernie's got a really, 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 really uphill battle. So I would say the make or break, the real is are you for real? Number 4, real, is going to be New York. It's coming up. That's going to be the subject of our poll dance, but we're going to see whether or not Bernie's a real dude. Take a quick break, a quick pause rather, put a pin in the election. We'll be back talking about everybody, all of our favorites in a second. But don't you hate it when the legends get old? It's just there's something a little bit sad when somebody who used to be at their top of their game come back and it's just not the same. Guns N' Roses is about to go on tour. I bet you there's going to be a lot of people there that's like, man, this ain't the Whiskey A Go-Go in 1989. This is just a bunch of old dudes kind of pretending like they're 19 again. Axl's not going to be able to hit the high notes like he used to. It's just going to be a little sad. Now, it's not to say that they're worthless. It's not to say that these people that were once titans in their industry were, are something that you shouldn't go out and see or are not important. Quite the contrary. I think that they play an important element in our pop culture landscape. It's just not the same is all. Which brings me to William Jefferson Clinton. Bill Clinton this week got into a tiff with a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters in Philadelphia. Let's just go ahead and take a look at that.
Whoa. No, wait. I don't want to deal with them all. Come on. No. Come on. Wait. Understand, this is what's the matter. I don't know how you would characterize the gang leaders who got 13-year-old kids hopped up on crack and sent them out onto the street to murder other African-American children. Maybe you thought they were good citizens. She didn't. You are defending the people who kill the lives you say matter. Tell the truth. You are defending the people who caused young people to go out and take guns. There was a 13-year-old girl in Washington, D.C.
Oh, Billy. Oh, Billy. No, just whatever you do, don't keep going. Don't keep going. Don't.
Who was planting her own photo? How would you do it? Now, look at these other ones. Look at this. That's not true.
No, don't stop. Don't stop your thing so you can personally argue. And now all of a sudden this is about 3 protesters in front of you versus everybody else who's there to see you speak. You're an ex-president, right? Like, this is not something that you should be engaging in. And also, this is a battle you can't win, right? This is a battle that you should not have to attempt. Let me take you back in time. Ladies and gentlemen, because I want to remind you that, again, Bill Clinton is not somebody that I would consider to be a great human being. All right? He's not. I would consider Bill Clinton to be one of the greatest political animals in the history of politics. That dude knew how to connect. He knew how to look into one person's eyes and make it the entire room's. He knew how to convey a point by leading with his humanity. He knew how to say, I have a vision and it includes you and especially you. Now, how good was he at it? He was so good at it that he could be, at the time, considered the first black president while amassing a record that many black activists today will list as among the most atrocious. But let's go ahead and take a look back in time. This is Bill Clinton debating George H.W. Bush in 1990.
Stimulating the export, investing more, better education system. Thank you. I'm glad to clarify.
Tell me how it's affected you again. You know people who lost their jobs and lost their homes?
Goes into the crowd, asks her to restate her question so he can make this a personal conversation between him and her. That's who you engage with on a one-on-one basis, somebody on national television during a debate, not a random protester who has 3 people next to him who are yelling at you.
Well,
I've been governor of a small state for 12 years. I'll tell you how it's affected me. Every year, Congress and the president sign laws that make us do more things and gives us less money to do it with. I see people in my state, middle-class people, their taxes have gone up in Washington and their services have gone down, while the wealthy have gotten tax cuts. I have seen what's happened in this last 4 years when, in my state...
Empathy. Every level of this. These are all absolute basic bitch talking points, right? You know, rich get richer, poor get poorer, factories are closing, I'm the only one who can help, right? These are basic points. What is different is the empathy. The difference is that you look at this dude and you're like, he might be wrong, but I know he cares.
When people lose their jobs, there's a good chance I'll know them by their names. When a factory closes, I know the people who ran it. When the businesses go bankrupt, I know them. And I've been out here for 13 months, meeting in meetings just like this ever since October, with people like you all over America. People that have lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, lost their health insurance. What I want you to understand is the national debt is...
So this is another thing that's very specific. You can see right there in... and here, I'm going to turn this down and just let it go. But and for the audio listeners, you can see this on the YouTube. But he never points at her, right? And this is something that he kind of pioneered, was this idea of your hand is never a pointing instrument. It's always either turned back or a fist or something like that. That's a classic, just the what? What is this guy talking about face by H.W. Bush? But just...
theory. And this decision you're about to make better be about what kind of economic theory you want. Not just people saying, I'm going to go fix it, but what are we going to do? What I think we have to do is invest in American jobs, American education, control American health care costs, and bring the American people together again.
And he ends with, bring the American people together again. We are in this together. Again, this dude wrote the book on how to communicate to black voters. Like, he is a transcendent talent, which is why it is like Willie Mays screwing up a routine pop fly, Frank Sinatra bailing out on the high notes, Elton John wearing a plain business suit when he sits down at the piano, when you have to watch this.
This is what's the matter. I don't know how you would characterize the gang leaders who got 13-year-old kids.
The gang leaders? Really? That's where we go? The gang leaders? And please, whatever you do, just don't say anything that is like so southern fried, out of touch, like 13-year-olds hopped up on crack.
Hopped up on crack and sent them out onto the street to murder other African-American children. Maybe you thought they were good citizens.
You're like... Now it's a contentious thing. Now it's not. We are all caring members of this political process. And although we do not have the same opinion on this specific issue, I'm going to count on that passion when we face the Republicans in the general election. Because you might not agree, and we are here to have a civil debate on whether or not Hillary Clinton's record is what you think it is or if it's what I think of it. But I will count on that passion when we go to the general election. That's what you say! That's what he would have said! That's what he would have said 1,000,000 times! He would have been sleeping. We're all in this together. And instead, look at him. Man, just look at this. Look at this shot. His finger is moving so fast you can't even see it. It's blurred out. That's how fast he's damning these Black Lives Matter protesters in the front. And again, my point isn't that the Black Lives Matter protesters are right. My point is that he made an ass of himself. And that dude used to be so good at it, he got ass so much that he almost got impeached for it. That dude was Frank Sinatra. And now he's Frank Sinatra Jr., which is to say that they're both dead. Okay, I don't know. That one got away from me. What do you say? Speaking of Frank Sinatra, you always used to walk out on stage in a crisp suit. What do you say we do that? Hey, it's Friday, right? You know, I'm sick of yelling about Bill Clinton. I'm sick of yelling about him. I think we should all get together. You know, I think we should. We should. Let's go out and celebrate on Friday. I think we should know we're not going to go to the Pottery Barn. We're not going to go to the wine bar. We're not going to even go to the dispensary. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you up.
Get on the floor if you got that booty.
Dance. Slap on that Drakkar Norm. Get a few ones, and remember to keep one in your pocket for the bathroom attendant. He's going to squirt soap in your hands. It's going to be awkward if you don't throw one in his little tin. We go to New York. So this will be our scores edition of the pole dance. On the Democratic side, a poll taken from 3/29, March 29th to April 1st. A sample of 718 likely voters, a margin of error of 5 points. First to the stage. Listen, just because he's been around a long time doesn't mean he can't get him down with the best of them. BK! Ladies and gentlemen, it is Brooklyn's own Bernie Sanders. 43%.
Get on the floor if you got that booty.
And your headliner. Not only does she have friends from the LIE to Buffalo, she's got beef on Wick in the same way she's got a Long Island iced tea. From one side of the state to the other side of the state, this is home turf for a woman who has won a statewide election in New York. Folks, that pantsuit says power, but that ass says so much more about your future. Let's go ahead and get a big round of applause for your headliner with 53% of the vote, Hillary Clinton. That is a spread of +10 for Hill. Tightening though. Tight. Like Tuco Salamanca in New York. Let's go ahead and take a look here at where the poll trending has gone, because if you are, I think Bernie's gotta. I mean, you gotta think about it. I mean, here we go. Let's just go ahead and take a look here. This is the Real Clear Politics average. In the last 2 weeks, there have been 3 polls taken. The most recent Emerson poll, which was released yesterday, has her up 18. That's where she wants to see it. The one that we read was the CBS News YouGov poll. That is Clinton +10. Quinnipiac had her up +12. That was done in March. You know, this is like Hillary losing in New York would be not catastrophic, but it would be a serious issue for her. And things have gotten testy over the last week. You know, you've actually had them trade a little paint. You know, Hillary's I think Hillary's team is getting a little again, this is not cute no more, Bernie. This is not cute. You're hanging around a little too long. You don't really have a pathway. Now you're talking about a contested convention. You can get the sense that she wants to blow Bernie out in New York so that can just be the death blow of it. Because she's going to win in Pennsylvania. Well, is she going to win? Hold on 2 seconds. I owe you guys more. I should probably know this. Hillary Clinton right now in Pennsylvania. Yeah, she's up 52-35 on Real Clear Average. So she's doing better in Pennsylvania than she is in New York. And better in Maryland, better in California. It just feels like, for her, I would assume that for her it feels like, come on, get off the stage. If we're going to be in New York, how about I invite you to a debate? It'll be in Harlem. And then halfway through talking, I'm going to have a clown with a broom, sweep you off the stage. That's what Hillary Clinton thinks. That's not what I think. That's what Hillary Clinton thinks. I'm voicing Hillary Clinton. You can email us. It is justinrobertyoung@gmail.com. Put politics in the subject line. Jessica writes in, I have the flu, but because I have the flu, I've been taking cold medicine. Since I'm about half the size of a normal human female of 20-ish age, I accidentally overdose on most medications. And because I have the flu and I'm taking stupid doses of medicine, I'm having weird politics dreams. I love this email. I'm going to try to remain cogent and share one with you while lucidity persists. Bear with me. So the dream starts in my neighborhood. I'm walking from door to door and people are answering. Commence montage of doors slamming in my face. Then I poop you not. This is my pitch. Look, politics are weird. You work and I'm disabled. I live down the block. So I figured I could help everybody out by showing you what I've learned so you can be an informed voter. And then the dream cuts to me explaining different bills and different politicals, history, and records. Objectively, the dream cuts again to a local news lady saying that a local turnout on voting day has increased. Then the scene cuts again to me doing driving runs in a van that I don't own. So you tell me, Justin, is this a message from the infinite eyes telling me to empower people, or am I just high on NyQuil and this dream is a byproduct of overdosing on cold medicine? I honestly don't know. I was raised being an atheist, so this whole calling from deities thing is new to me. Jessica, number one, congratulations. You're my favorite person. Number two, is this you being called by God to walk from door to door and explain the politics of the world to the uninformed? No. And by the way, just go do half doses on the NyQuil. Or do the same and just keep writing me about your crazy dreams because I love them and I love you. Tracy writes in, so here's my issue. A lot of my friends and coworkers are arguing, proclaiming that the primary season is rigged or non-democratic. How is it fair that the same states get to vote first in the election cycle, election after election, forcing us to only get to pick from 2 or 3 candidates, which we may or may not like any of, as to where they had 5 or 3, maybe Californians would have preferred Rand Paul. But the fact that the small group of early states didn't means, by him drumming out, that the latter states don't get to voice their true preference. And I'm not even going to mention superdelegates. To this I say, so what? Think of the Democratic and Republican parties as clubs, private organizations, which these candidates choose to align themselves under. The DNC and RNC are not looking for a democratic nomination process, and being private groups with your private agendas. Why would you think that they would think about it any different? Jury, what do you think? Is it fair that an unfair process, fairly obvious to be at such fairness, is met with such unfair flair? Okay, so number one, that was very much written to trip me up live on the air. And I do appreciate it, but come on, Tracy, help me out. Okay. Do I think it's unfair that the same amount of early states get to vote? No, I don't think it's unfair at all. In fact, I think that, what are your other options? So you randomize the states, then you get into an issue of how they're randomized, and you have a problem of maybe front loading things or putting them in too big of states. I think that the way it's set up now, gives us a fairly good balance of small, manageable early states for which you can set a foothold, then followed up by larger states for which you could hopefully parlay momentum. As much as we like to laugh about Iowa and New Hampshire, these are states where you get candidates that are kind of outside the mainstream and maybe don't have a whole ton of money. But they can do well there, raise their stature, continue to raise money by way of small donations, and then hopefully convince other larger donors to come on board because they believe in their message. So I think that the way we have it, although weird and imperfect, might be, I don't find to be any more unfair than another solution. But if anybody else has another solution, email it in because I'm very excited to continue talking about this subject. But that about wraps it up for this Politics program. If you would like to email the show, it is justinrobertyoung@gmail.com. You can buy The Contender at thecontender.us. Remember that 2016 expansion is available for pre-order right now. Music provided by Valesco and Trop Killers, and you can follow me at Justin R. Young. Everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, some folks, they talk about politics. Some podcasts talk about politics. This is the only show that gives you politics. See you next week.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.